Good evening. My name is Karen Bell, and I am presenting a short PowerPoint presentation on the characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. So, autism in perspective. Autism and autism spectrum disorders are bio-neurological development disabilities that usually appear before the age of 3, and it impacts development, including social interaction, communication skills, verbal and nonverbal, as well as cognitive function. And it has also been found to be 4 times more likely in boys than girls. And as of 2020, approximately 1 in 54 children in the United States has autism or autism spectrum disorders. Next, there are a few words to define with ASD or autism spectrum disorder. Neurological and cognitive are in the first category, and cognitive is defined as the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. Neurological is affecting the nervous system. Then we have behavior and sensory. Behavior is the way in which a person acts in response to a situation or stimulus, and sensory is relating to sensation or the physical senses. Communication and language. Communication means sending it's the meaning of sending or receiving information. And language is the principal method of human communication consisting of words that can be conveyed by speech, writing, or gesture. And social is relating to society or its organization, needing companionship, or living together in groups. And this will typically happen in a hierarchy system with complex communication. So next we will look at a brief overview of cognitive and neurological characteristics in autism spectrum disorders. Cognitive characteristics can include, but this is not limited to, difficulty understanding other people's perspectives, challenging understanding and responding in social situations, sometimes lacking flexibility in thinking or doing things, oriented toward fact opposed to fiction, conceptual versus details, and literal interpretation of language. So figurative and literal language, in education can be very tricky for those with ASD. And 3 neurological characteristics are motor impairment, sleep disorders, which were found in approximately 83% of those with ASD, and epilepsy, which was also found in approximately 33% of those with ASD, and that has been linked to genetic disorders. Next, we have behavior and sensory characteristics. And once again, this is not an exhaustive list, but some of these characteristics for behavior can include lines up toys or other objects, such as the picture in the lower right-hand corner of the little girl lining up her crayons. Another characteristic is possibly playing with toys the same way every time, or liking parts of an object, such as the wheels on a vehicle or a little toy. And those with autism spectrum disorders can also be very organized. They can get upset by minor changes, have obsessive interests, must follow certain routines, and can also exhibit flapping of hands, rocking of the body, or spinning self in circles to help stimulate themselves and to keep themselves focused and put together. Additional sensory characteristics can include being withdrawn from touch, refusing to eat certain textured foods, refusing to wear certain types of clothing, complaining about having their hair or face washed, and avoids getting their hands dirty. For example, I have a 9th grade student who is in a ceramics class, and so they need to use clay in class. And this student has sensory impairments and does not want to touch or feel the clay that is needed for the ceramic class, and also they don't like the mess that it can make. And so we've had to work with accommodations there to allow this student to work with other items in class in order to fulfill some of those same requirements for the class. Another sensory characteristic is to use one's fingertips rather than the whole hand to manipulate objects. So that can be part of sensory characteristics. Now, there are also a few triggers that have been found consistently. It's not an exhaustive list, nor does everybody that has ASD actually exhibit this, but it can include tiredness, sensitivity to sensory output, which we just discussed, unrealistic expectations, routines and rituals where there may be changes or completely new things going on, or transitions. The student that I spoke about in the ceramics class is also experiencing tiredness. And we will see a little later that there will be another example there that comes up that will be an example of what this student is going through as well. And routines and rituals with distance learning over the past year. There have been lots of schedule changes and use this platform and use that platform, and you can't have this, but you need to use that. And it's been quite a struggle for this student, but they have handled it very well so far, and we only have a few more weeks to go. And there was a wonderful website that I found. It's actually from Australia. It's called the Raising Children Network, and there is a link at the end of this presentation. And one of the sections that they had was a 3-step process to help change unwanted behaviors. And of course, we know that it would go further than just these 3 steps, but this would be the basic process to help change those unwanted behaviors. Step 1 would be to choose a behavior. 2, identify what triggers the behavior and how it meets your child's needs or your student, their needs. And then step 3 is you're going to work to make changes in that behavior. Like I said, it's a little more in depth than that, but those are the 3 basic steps. Next, we have communication and language and social characteristics. Social is a very important component there with communication and language. So we have all 3 of those together. Communication and language characteristics, and approximately 50% of those who are diagnosed with autism or autism spectrum disorders develop limited or no speech abilities whatsoever. I had a student last year with ASD who did not learn how to communicate, or at least to speak, I should say, until they were approximately 7 years old. I have another friend who has a 10-year-old with severe autism and traumatic brain injury who has no communication, or I should say verbal speech abilities, and they actually use one of the augmentative and alternative communication, or ACC systems, that is listed below. These ACC systems can include unaided or aided systems. Examples of unaided systems are manual sign language or gestures. Manual sign language can be tough, especially for those who have cognitive disabilities and or sensory motor impairments that they are dealing with. And with the aided systems, one of the most popular ones right now are PECs, or Picture Exchange Communication System. That's what one of my friends uses with her 10-year-old that I was just talking about, and they work constantly on. She will exchange PECs, or the pictures, for certain items or to help identify needs at that moment. And social characteristics that go into the communication and language as well. We know that language and communication is a part of that social interaction, and those with ASD can have difficulty understanding and expressing emotion. They can also exhibit poor eye contact, and they can prefer to play alone. So the student that I referred to earlier that I have in my class this year, they definitely prefer to be alone. So this distance learning thing has been wonderful for them. They have flourished. There have not been those same sensory issues that they've had to deal with in the class before, or where other people trigger behaviors. And last but not least, there is a short list of resources that I use to put this presentation together. There are hyperlinks there in blue that you can check on to get further information, as well as completing Google searches on your own that hopefully there will be some keywords here that will help lead you further to exploration of the characteristics of autism spectrum disorders. Thank you for watching.